I think that my vision and what's in my heart is there and it's been painted. But again, did I paint it or did spirit paint that for me?
Welcome to Living Magick, an occult-cast and your gateway to the mystical and the esoteric. I'm Fola, and I'll be your guide on this enchanting journey through the realms of magic, where we explore the mysteries that lie just beyond the veil in a way that is practical, fun, and inspiring. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with my dear friend and soul sister, Janelle, from the Edmonton-based business Essence of an Empress. In this episode, we explored what it means to tap into one's spiritual abilities and gifts as a healer, how the healing process may sometimes mean spending time on your own, and how working with your ancestors and guides can support meaningful transformations. So, without further ado, I invite you to step with me into the wondrous world of Living Magick.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name's Fola, and today for Living Magick, I have the lovely Janelle. She is here in Edmonton as well, and I'm excited to have you on the show.
I know. This is a good day.
Yeah,
This is a good day. It's already a good day.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. When did we meet? I was like, was that like 2 years?
I think it's about 2 years now. We're coming up to 2 years.
Is that, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So just like divine timing and something about you.
yeah.
Energy. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. Oh, weird. I won't get into like all the
The
details of the
details,
story, but
yeah.
bizarre chance meeting strangers at a breakfast place
Yeah.
and synchronistically finding each other at another store. Yeah, bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. It was meant and it was guided, and I'm so happy to look at where we are now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't that kind of how like spirit works, I guess? Just, and like that's kind of the part of the show is like, what does it look like to walk with spirit, walk in magic and live magic? And I've heard you say this before about being magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, do you mind sharing with us a bit what that looks like?
Even our meeting, Fola, I was at the point of needing to surround myself with more like-minded individuals. And so I asked Spirit to help bring them to me, right? Because I'm not very smiley and hi. That's not my personality necessarily. But I asked Spirit to like guide the ones that need to be around me, and then I can have mutual relationships with, bring them. And that was about 2 days later. We're in a coffee shop, a breakfast spot, and then in the coffee shop, and you had approached me so kind, and but you just seemed so familiar, right? And that's it, that it's tapping into the energy of what's around us. It's not necessarily outside of us. It's the magic is all within us, and it's just paying attention, asking, pay attention, see the signs.
Yeah, because it's so easy, I think, to ask, but then not take action. Like you could have just stayed indoors.
Yeah.
Like both of us, we could have just recluse and like ignore the kind of common reality that it does require a bit of like putting oneself out there.
Right.
And you mentioned like maybe not being so smiley, or like I wouldn't see you as that. I see you as like the social butterfly for sure. Like I don't really, so like it sounds like you have a different view of yourself within that. Like how have you kind of then had to approach, spiritual relationships or engaging your outward world?
Right.
In that, with that sense of isolation or introvertedness.
Like many, I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for many that sometimes the journey to spiritual enlightenment can be dark, right? So you almost go through, I find many people go through a somewhat of an awakening where it's like everything feels so magical, and but everything I believed and everything I've wanted, and wait, everything's falling apart. Now your relationships are, and the things that you've sort of identified with and built this persona on isn't actually real. right? For many, I've found. So it can be isolating and depressive and going into, so for me, spirituality has been, I need to, when I was ready to come out of it and be like, hey guys, am I not crazy?
Mm.
I needed community and I needed to reach out. So, um, just asking, yeah, just asking for the guidance and following it. Following it is a big thing for me.
Well, and like, how does it feel in your body? You know, I think of like, remember you invited me even to the like Indigenous Day event, and part of me was like, oh, I should go. And this other part's like, no, just like stay, like the internal, like, and it, to me, I would identify it as a resistance, like a wall. But like, where, if you want to share, like, how have you noticed that in your body and then been able to step through any resistance or discomfort or like,
I don't, it's honestly, Fola. So there's conversations that are going on in my head. And so it's a voice that's not mine. So that's one identifier.
Okay.
And then the other part is sometimes it is physically like, I sometimes feel like I don't have control over my body. Like I am in the car, whether I wanted to be in the car. It's like, no, move now.
Okay.
Right? Like it is move now. Because I get in my own way. You know, sometimes there is that self-sabotage, self-sabotage. And you get stuck and in your habits or in your head and not wanting to necessarily push forward. And spirit has moved me to be like, no, now. Yeah.
Okay, so you identify that as spirit, like guides or like what?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
that's how it's shown up for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know, a lot of folks are not really sure maybe like how to tap into that. And like, was there a moment where it just sort of happened where you realize, okay, this is like divine guidance showing me on the path, or
So there was a lot of stories that it was almost like following breadcrumbs, you know, and it started just tuning in with myself. That's the first thing that I would always tell people. Like, if you wanted to connect with spirit, and your divine guides and your team, I usually would recommend like going within. You know, it has to start hearing your own voice so then you can start recognizing other energies and other voices, right? Nature is a really good way. Immersing yourself in nature and just when you take out a lot of the exterior noise that's coming at us, whether it be our calendar, bells, our phones, whatever, the noise of everything else, in society, you hear so much more, right? And start developing that relationship. And I did that through, I mean, it sounds so deep, but I did it through yoga and meditation. Like yoga came first and then it was meditation. And I've always been attuned to energies and spirits as a child and things like that. But it was something that I also chose to shut off. And so when I got older, my dreams became more louder. And then it was things that I just couldn't deny, you know? So when you start seeing like, I was just thinking that, or I was just talking about that person, and you start seeing more and more quote unquote coincidences where I just feel are just synchronicities and more alignment, you then now feel more empowered to trust what's being shown to you and that communication. So the magic isn't necessarily out there. You realize it's always just flowing within you. Like, so how much do you want to let it move through your body and being that vessel?
Yeah. And I was reading this book and he's talking about like the cosmic energy and kind of how we can see it, like the auric field and hear it even, which was one that I didn't really realize I was hearing it.
Yeah.
That like vibration is kind of how I would identify it. And yet like, if we're not in the flow of that like cosmic energy, which is I think when the synchronicities and all these signs show up, like we can shut it off. Like it's, and he gave an example of kind of like water flowing, and it'll, you know, if there's a rock there, it's going to just completely
Right.
change direction. And so it's like, how do we maintain this sense of cleanliness or purity in our energy field so that those examples of synchronicities or the confirmations of alignment can be so present. And yet I think of, you know, how just in the spiritual journey, it sounds like you kind of went through that. That was very similar. The spiritual emergence or the dark night of the soul in like the kind of Kabbalistic tradition, they had identified that as sort of like the crossing into the abyss.
Yeah.
So we can get into these higher kind of spiritual realms or levels of consciousness. It's like, I feel like that is paramount. Like that has to happen for people. Do you want to talk a bit about that? Like what that's looked like for you?
So for me, I remember even asking to start seeing things in a different way. I remember I had seen a psychic and she said that there was an issue and I was gonna lose some vision. She didn't say it was me, but I thought it was somebody else. And the incident did happen. And all she kept saying was, don't worry, don't worry. And I do believe that was one of the points of like change for me. It started to happen in that so I asked as my eyesight was like changing and things like that for me to start seeing things differently. I didn't know what I was I didn't know what I was asking for. But I started to see things differently. Hearing things like I always make prayer and homage to the people that are like, I hear voices, right? And then here I am, I hear voices too, you know, and I'm so sorry that they weren't able to, that there wasn't this platform, that there wasn't the community to be able to talk about it in a normalized way now, right? In how it is now. So just knowing that we are entirely magical beings and anything is possible. Like, you know, we talked about parting water and all of those things the other day, right? So why can't we do it?
Yeah.
Why is that not tangible for us?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I think those types of miracles, making them, what did I just saw, oh, what's his name? He's like a comedian turned spiritual guy. Oh, if I can remember his name later, I'll put it in the description. But I saw one of his thumbnails on a video and his shirt said something like miracles normalized.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. Because like, to me, a miracle is as simple as just like a synchronicity, you know, like it's like, oh, wow, like the cherry example, we were talking about cherries and like, so the other day we both have encounters with cherries. It's like, to me, that's a synchronicity and showing that like, okay, you're on the path, I'm on the path, and we're like moving towards something, you know, as a collective, as like two individuals, woman, whatever, but also in our individual ways. And to me, that's also like a miracle. It's like, what? Like, how can this be even? It's magical.
Yeah.
How can that even
So,
be what's happening?
How did that even reach our conversation?
Yeah, that too.
Right? Like when we start looking at everything as a blessing, everything as a miracle, everything as a message, you're just seeing the magic all around all the time. And it sometimes could be exhausting too, but we have the choice as well, right? Again, it comes back to our choice to pay attention to it. Our ancestors are always trying to communicate with us, which is also just other versions of ourselves, right? I used a lot of ancestral work. I dabbled in moon cycles, and not even dabbled, I still follow moon cycles, but even within my own as a woman, my moon cycle and honoring those things, right? So once you start just tapping into your own rhythm, right? I feel like that's really where you start to feel your power and realize it's not, I don't know, people have been lying to us and making it seem like it's something you got to pay gurus for, like, you know, like you need, or you can only be born this way, or it is something that's attainable for everybody if you want to do that work.
And I think if there's a desire, and also like as part of like the blueprint of one's life, like something will will unlock,
Mhm.
you know, and then having these conversation like normalizes it for sure.
Yeah.
And I think too that like dark night of the soul or whatever, however we want to identify that is part of that cycle of like
Mhm.
light and dark, that in those periods of the darkness or the sense of like defeat and like, because I've definitely been there, like, you
Mhm.
know, when I think back to that really intense period of depression, like it was just a dark night of the soul.
Right.
And I was like realizing things about myself and relationships and really questioning like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
Like, do I really want to go into university for this length of time and
Right.
focus my energy here? Would I much rather like explore, you know? And so that's one thing I definitely encourage is when those moments of like the darkness, just tapping in, being with it, and then, okay, what is this showing? Because that I think
Right.
is like drawing out the magic of it.
Right.
There is like you know, we only have the shadows because of the light.
Right. So true.
So,
So true. And what do we need to learn through it, right? And so staying open, staying curious,
yeah.
right? I'd also recommend always staying in a protected space, because there is, playing with quote unquote magic or playing with energies isn't a joke. It's real. There is the light and the dark out there. So we tapping into feeling really grounded and solid in yourself. I feel like everybody wants to elevate and be higher and ascend, but without doing that work, you can't skip that step. It's part of the cycle, like you say, right? It's part of that death. You're going to grieve, and then you're going to be reborn, and you will go through it in various ways throughout this journey. But keeping yourself protected, surround yourself with loved ones, and have a grounding thing, like really be rooted into what's for you, and be flexible and change, like bending with that energy of change. Because sometimes we're grounded in this and something that I would have thought I would never do or not be okay with. Oh, I see the perspective now. And I feel stable in myself to now explore that perspective. Right. So before I would have never sat down to be like, occult what? But now I'm like, what is this about? Show me it from your lens, right? And why is it not okay for me? And what is okay for me? Right. So really just I'm so happy that you have this platform to be able to share that and share different perspectives. So it's really important.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Well, and then like the note that as we had our conversation earlier downstairs, like that even when we're so far along the path, like you can still go through the periods of time of questioning or doubt.
Yeah.
I think that's part of faith. Like it just has to be a little bit, and it helps us to bring the curiosity, I suppose. But it's all guiding, it's all coming up for a reason so that new ideas can come through.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I was just thinking about, I think yesterday when I was at your space, you were using like Florida water stuff, right? And then so you're talking about like using practices or ways to balance and ground. Can you give some examples of that? Like, is Florida water one of those? And what else? Like, I don't.
Florida water. So I use Florida water for cleansing spaces. I'll do my floors, clean the floors, and then that water has to go through the back door. So ancestral, it's interesting because as much as I don't practice Catholicism or any Christian methods much, because my ancestors did, it still shows up in my practice. So I believe in the power of Psalms, right? So it was written and it worked. And so I do utilize what I can, what works for me. And then, but I also just trust that it's always guided, right? So respectfully, I use kitchen tools, cinnamon to draw good luck and sugar to sweeten, coffee to speed things up. I do all those things, right? It's out there. And once you start tapping into the essence of everything has an energy,
Mm.
and when we start utilizing that energy and just operating in that and in that, right? Your life becomes a ritual, if you can slow down and allow that to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes me think again of the cherry example, right? Like how
Right.
the simple, expensive maybe practice of buying cherries could lead to a place of abundance or expansion in our wallets or just in our life, our
Yeah.
spirituality or whatever, and yeah, I really like that. Even, and as someone like, I feel like I've tapped into a bit of like herbs or things like that, and yet I forget to just kind of like, okay, well, what does honey represent?
Right.
Oh, it's like a sweetness of life.
Right.
It's this, like it's as simple as that. And I'm sure there are collective, whether it's ancestral, like you said, reasons or, kind of correspondences to those, but also like personal. Like, what do we on a personal level attribute the energy or characteristic of a particular like herb or element? Hey,
Yeah. So it is also what makes sense for you, and what does it mean to you, right? So, I mean, I'll have people be like, "Oh, I need cord cutting, and I'll need this." And when I prepare these sort of rituals or spells, I hate to call them intentions, I like to call them. I do, if I ever need a replacement, it's like, this works for me for this. And it comes from your intention. So the more that we can root into what is our intention, what are we about, what are we standing for, it comes through the work that we do. So
yeah, okay. So, like, how has that been with an ancestral lens? Like you mentioned, ancestrally, maybe there was more of like a Christian kind of context, and then here you are now. Like, how does those conversations, I guess, even go about?
That happened it was a full moon, and that particular full moon was me cooking food that I've never cooked before, and it turned out fabulous. So I was like, oh, let me put some on my altar. And I needed to get candles. I needed to do all the things and do some yoga and journal and everything that came up. And out of that one full moon, I don't want to call it a ceremony, but honoring, just recognizing that it's full moon. Let me just do the things today and see what changes. Um, Essence of an Empress was born. I woke up and wrote down Essence of an Empress, tea, incense. Didn't know what else because I like drinking tea and I burn incense every day. I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but just wrote it down. And then I got a call from one of my spirit sisters, and she's like, "Hey, I had a dream about you. I have messages for you."
What is it? This
Lavender?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that's a whole other thing. Yeah. Anyway,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. So again, the intertwining, right? And so she comes and says, your ancestors are all wanting you to wake up now. It's time. They understand you're scared, but it's time now. Sorry." No, I'm like, okay. And so she just said for me to allow it. Just open up and allow it, because I was I was comfortable with me and whoever this spirit guiding me is, but what do you mean there's more? She's like, oh, there's lots. And so she just asked me one by one to just ask that they come and sit with me and just be open to it. And I remember the first incident of dreaming of this, or just kind of having this energy around. And I'm asking my family, like, hey, who's this? And I'm describing. Nobody's really answering. What were you talking about? I let it go. And then I had an incident just walking around a store, and I'm so confused as to why I'm in the store. Why am I looking at these things? Why am I even thinking about this stuff? I don't even celebrate Christmas. Like, what is all this? And so it just dawned on me to call a certain family member, and they're the ones that are like, oh, I'm like, hey, tell me about your relationship with this person. And then they explained to me, and they're like, oh, they loved Christmas and this and this. And I was like, let me pull this card over for a second. And so that's actually how it all started. And after that, it's been flowing. I've allowed it to flow. I've allowed to get out of the way. And it is baby steps. Like, your team is there and they're protecting you, and they are happy that you're allowing yourself to be a vessel. So as I do that, I trust that it's like a petal unfolding. It's just step by step. You know, I don't feel scared. I don't feel intimidated. I'm going with it now. Yeah, I'm going with it now.
And I think that eventually is what happens, you know, like it does. You just kind of find the flow within whatever that experience is, and being able to like categorize what is happening. I tell people, like, you know, especially around energy healing, Reiki, like learning those practices, we can again have like collective dictionary of what the different experiences are, and then we also have to create our own individual ones, right? And catalog what we're receiving and what that might mean, and then how you go about sharing it with other people.
Exactly.
You know, like what you've mentioned before, getting like information about others, even if you're not necessarily like sitting in front to do a reading, you know, like how did that sort of start showing up, and how are you able to move through that and start to kind of create a bit of a barrier? Because I think that's what happens for some folks. It could be so overwhelming, that you're getting so many downloads of things.
So that is part of me not being out all the time. I'm very protective of the spaces that I go and enter, because it can be overwhelming. I cleanse myself regularly, obviously, with just getting up, and then if it's smudging in the mornings or at night, and washing off. Those kind of practices are important for me. Where I created a bit of a distance with it is that through my practice, like, this is the place, this is the time that I'm to get the messages. And if obviously there's things that will happen out, or if I get a dream or anything like that, I'll let people know. But I typically only have a small circle around me. So I try not to, like, I don't want anybody else's business. So the messages that I'm getting are for my closer people, right? So I try to, everybody else, book an appointment, look at what you need to get there, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you pretty much have that under control, or it hasn't been like where you're like so like, "Ooh, where's all this coming from?
Right.
And who is it for?" And okay.
Just kind of staying out of those kind of spaces, right? Where it would be overwhelming, because no.
Well, that kind of like validates for me sometimes. So I'll be like, how come I can be so isolative? And it's like, no, what I'm learning more and more is just being in, like, as soon as someone agrees to be in the type of communication with me, or vice versa, it like opens up some channel that I have to be super mindful of, and do all those different techniques or whatever that work for each person. But
it's so simple, you know. You're talking to your girlfriend, and they're just miserable, and or the person that's depressed every day, and it naturally just wears on you, right? So I can hold the space for it. That's what my shop is for. That's what the space is for, right? But in my day-to-day relationships, I generally try to surround myself with the people that are doing the work, and I'm here to support as a friend. Do you know what I mean? So it just makes everything so much easier.
Well, and that's why I think a lot of relationships kind of fall away. It's like, oh wait, I've been doing the work for you.
That too.
I definitely know
that too.
Relationships where it's like, okay, now I'm gonna just, because ultimately everyone needs to do it themselves. Whether in this lifetime or another lifetime. Like, you might as well get on it now, people. That's all I can say.
That's true. It's true.
So like, if someone were to ask you what type of practices you practice, you know, because like, I know labels can be kind of weird, but like, where would you kind of classify yourself?
Okay, so out of respect, I did my Reiki master training. I do energy healing because I do also believe that my appointments, you'll book a Reiki session or you'll book a energy clearing. In my session, if a client is open, they will get messages, right? And I'm just going to pick up of whatever's going on. So whether it's something in your body or something in your past, I don't know what's coming. Whatever's shown to me is what I share. And then if you need some homework or some support tools to help you get through working through that, sometimes the blocks in our body that we're feeling is nothing to do with that knee pain, as you would know, right? So it has another root. That could be from when your brother, this, you know. So I just prepare for whatever the client needs. That's what they receive. And my guides help me do that, you know, deliver that for the client. So I never really think of what I'm doing necessarily. It's an experience. Right?
Yeah, like very subjective and based like from session to session, even with the one individual.
Absolutely. Yeah. They'll never have the same session. And so what I've noticed, and I'm so grateful for, I have clients that only come to me in crisis, and that's like, sure, fine. But then the ones that come fairly regularly, even if it's every season, you know, and in between that time, they've actually done the work or put some thought into what had come up, where their life is now is almost 360. Do you know what I mean? And that to me feels so good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. To be able to see and hear through the evidence of like what's new. Yeah. And I think an important thing there too, you know, I think to my own journey and going to particular healers or people that I like trust to go and see, it's like, you know, life isn't perfect. It's just, that listening to the call of when it's time to go, and then recognizing through that like integrative process what has been learned. And now where am I at that I'm like moving in this next direction? And I mean, that's just life. I think though, many people, we've been told even say, you know, people think, okay, if I go see a therapist or a healer, a chiropractor, like my problems will be completely solved. But it's like, well, no, if you kind of fall off the ball, it's gonna just like, you're gonna be deeper even sometimes. So that consistency, I guess, is kind of a part of that in some degree, whatever that consistency looks like to that individual.
Right. Yeah. So I'm creating more opportunities for people to check in more. So it doesn't have to be, don't call, that you have to call me every time something bad is happening. Like we all have access to these tools, right? So use the people around you. There's so many great healers in their own way, right? So what I can offer versus what you can offer. And in the background, like I had a background in counseling, child and youth care counseling, and family social services. And so working with families and family stuff coming out through Reiki, I believe makes sense. Makes sense why that stuff shows up, right? It's all divinely guided. And that's what I feel really good about. I'm like, it's not me, whatever. It's not me. Yeah.
Have you ever like done much around like past life stuff for yourself?
For myself, just a couple. I have a few stories, like a few drops of records that I've tapped into. And so one was that I was teaching children rituals as a priestess. It was made very clear to me that I was not a high priestess. Okay. This came from two different sources. So that was why it was like very straight. Like just priestess there. I was like, okay, fine, I'll take it. I was teaching rituals to children, which, I mean, fast forward, I teach yoga and meditation to children now. So I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one's just missed me. The other one's missing me right now. That's the most recent one that I tapped into. So, yeah, I don't know where we were going with that, but yeah,
Well, yeah.
I've done some, and I pick up on it for my kids right now. That's my big thing. So I want someone. I don't have like, I haven't practiced enough with the Akashic records and things, and the past life regression things I've done. I'm not able to get as deep into it, but I haven't been able to yet. But
Yeah, I was just
yeah.
kind of curious, like how you feel that has informed what you do in this lifetime. Because they'll say like it's important to kind of reflect on some past life records or
Right.
experiences, especially the ones that are so deeply intertwined with how we live our life now. And it sounds like you're kind of drawing upon that. If you're, you used to work with kids and now you're working with kids now.
Yeah.
And like, how then have you pulled that energy? Is there like a conscious way that you would say you pull the energy from that past into the now?
I haven't said that I've done a conscious energy pull. I think that it's validation that I'm on the right path, right? So this was part of my past, and my past isn't going anywhere. So let me carry that piece with me as I continue moving forward. And how can I develop that? Where does this take me now? Right? And up until that point, if someone asked me 2, 3 years ago, was I teaching yoga? No. Was I teaching yoga to kids? No. What are we talking about? So all of the above, I'm like, oh, and now I'm here, and that makes sense, right? And it just feels like that, the pieces of the puzzle. Okay, now what else is there? What else is on this picture?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're asking that question, like, what else is there? Do you ever come in with your own desires as to what you want to create, or do you primarily let like spirit kind of show you and then you go for it? You know what I mean?
I think that my vision and what's in my heart is there, and it's been painted. But again, did I paint it, or did spirit paint that for me? Right? Because me, Janelle J, in human form, I'm going to twist and turn and go 1,000 other ways, but that vision is still there. So it's just for me to step into it. Did I create it, or is it being created over there for me? And as I'm preparing myself to get there.
Yeah, I wonder that question often. Like, I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think if we're feeling a pull towards a particular vision or a way of life or being, like this desire, like it's there. It was like birthed into us from like a divine blueprint.
Right.
And now we get to like go along that path, kind of making it happen.
Like
Again, that like miracle part of like, okay, well, Moses, was it God or Moses that did the miracle of parting the sea? It's like, well, Moses had to do it, but like we could kind of argue, did Moses have a choice?
Right.
Like, how everything that kind of happened to even get him into the Pharaoh's like, grasp initially as a babe and then into, okay. Yeah, I sit with that sometimes. I wonder like where do these desires or feelings come, these visions, or just like a knowing? That's how I would describe, that's more how I perceive it, like this knowing of like that's meant for me in this lifetime. Like but like that then makes me go into the whole question again of, well, what about dark or light? And is there ever times that you've noticed where visions or what you thought were like deceptions? And is that even a true, like, is the deception a real thing? Is that possible? Is it a redirection?
I try to stand from the part of it's a redirection. As I live in and attract only what's good for me. So if I've made a turn that doesn't feel so good, I quicker know the good route, right? So I try to live on that side. What I know now versus what I knew before, I'm not judging myself for it. So was I deceived? Maybe. But am I, if I actually know the truth now and I feel the truth and I act in
Mhm.
accordance to my truth now, right? So
Is
I
it's
don't know.
so it's less of a deception and more of like ignorance in a way,
Yeah,
but because
exactly.
we don't know
But I
everything
did.
and we're
Yeah.
constantly evolving our awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So really opening, there are some hard no's. Like if there might be videos on the internet, I've been like, I would never, like all these declarations that just do not apply to me anymore, you know? So yeah,
Like of things that you had done or
have
things that
done
you were
or said
interested.
or
Oh, yeah.
interested in and things like that. I just don't believe it anymore,
Mhm.
right? So I had to, I always just try to get people. So from what I've learned from that is I'm doing everything that I can with the information that I have right now. And
Yes.
as long as I remain curious and open, it can change.
Mhm.
It might not, because I'm so rooted in, no, this is it. But just as the world is changing and everything around us is changing, we also need to be open to that.
Mhm.
So even the word like Reiki master, I have a problem. How you gonna master energy and it's always changing? So
Yeah, that's a bit of a deceptive word in
right.
itself. Like,
So I just remain open and humble to knowing that there's more.
Mhm.
There's so much more to uncover.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's problematic, if I could say that, when things aren't changing. And that doesn't mean like drastic change constantly where it's chaotic.
No.
But like the natural evolution towards this perfection is how I would identify it.
Yeah.
Like, not that we can ever really obtain that. I think though that's kind of what the universe is doing, is just like wanting to experience everything so that it knows. And that to me is kind of like the perfection energy.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, I still want to hear more of your thoughts recorded, obviously, on on the polarity of light and dark.
Yeah, so light and dark. I just for as far as light and dark, I feel like they are the balance. It is the polarity. It is necessary. It's necessary for enlightened individuals to actually be able to have compassion, understanding, and respect for darkness, because it's only through the darkness that we were able to come through the light as well. So, with that, are we helping others become closer to the light? Um, are we respecting that we just need, um, as a collective, we're only as high as our lowest vibration, right? So, can we be brighter, more compassionate, more open, understanding, to help those that may feel like they're stuck in darkness or projecting other lower vibrational energy? I hate all these freaking words. Do you know what I'm saying? But can we help them through it? Can we help them see a different way? Can they be curious enough, right? By us standing in light, and how, like bridging the gap towards that gray area where it's like, oh, maybe it's this, or I understand that, right? That's how we can truly rise, you know?
Yeah, because I guess like you're kind of saying like the rising is the middle point. Like that's how, at least in like all the kind of Kabbalistic ways, it would be like, okay, well, you have the three pillars, left and right, but like the main vision is really that middle third pillar, like that center point. And I feel like that's kind of even like Buddhism, these kind of like mindfulness ways of being are all about like just the equanimity, being not, and I have to remind myself, it's like, oh, how come the happiness can't always be there? But it's like, it's not so much about happiness and like this joy that's like, it's more like contentment in that balance point. Because then we're not like swaying between both ends of the spectrum. And then it makes me like think, I guess, technically, with like the the lower vibration, if we can identify that as evil or dark, like the fact that that exists in its level means then there has to be an opposition to that, like
Right.
the highest,
Right.
like, so not better or worse, but like a negative and a positive, like plus minus. And so in a way, almost even maybe some ways for us to shift the mindset is to recognize, okay, that like negative thing is there, the evil or whatever. It's like, thank you, because now I know there has to be a positive mirror to that. And then maybe the questions, like you said, like, show me, where are those positive experiences?
Right.
Where is that positive form or life form of that experience that I can witness and see now that I have seen the dark or the negative aspect?
Yeah, removing the judgment. If we can take the judgment out of it and put ourselves like let's put our curiosity hats on, let's put our compassion, those to tap into those frequencies, obviously protected. Like protected in what you know has kept you safe. It's okay to meet people halfway and where they are or where they are to try to help. I don't know. That's what my mission is out here for. So
well, that's why I use sleep often. If I like if something's going on and I feel kind of like, maybe there is judgment, or I'm not really seeing it in like the way, I feel like there's another way to perceive or to understand a topic or a situation. Usually I'll just, bedtime, set the intention, like write it in my journal and sleep. And then usually something comes through the dream or in conversations in the day. And that's been like a lifesaver. Otherwise, it's easy to just stay in the spiral of like chaos or like criticism or whatever. The self-righteous.
Just like on a grander scale. So if we could do that in our own individual lives, in our own little interactions, and if everybody just did that, do you know what I mean? Like on a grander scale, look what could stop. But listen, there's lots of work to do out here.
Yeah. Totally.
There's lots of work to do out here.
Well, and so that kind of leads me then, as we wrap up here, like where and how can people reach out to you or find out more about what it is that you're doing to kind of support that healing?
Right. So on Instagram, I have Essence of an Empress. You can find me there. Reach out. My DMs are open, not for the weird shit, but
define weird.
but no, ultimately, like come have a cup of tea. I love talking about this stuff. So yeah, whatever's going on for you, I'd love to share. And
yeah, so because you're based in Edmonton here, you have a space, people can reach out to you and drop by.
Yeah, just on 124th Street. So just book an appointment or just let me know you're coming by. I do, and so don't mean to brag or anything. I do have some long distance clients. So I do offer virtual sessions as well.
Yeah, that's what I love. Like this work can just extend.
I know. We just put our reach out there. Yeah. So that's been really beautiful as well. Yeah. So readings, Reiki, clearings, just life development, spiritual life development. Yeah.
And I just like thinking to the times I've been in your space and you're like working with people or whatever, and just you're like like kind of like this nonchalant, like grounded, just respond. Like you respond as needed. I really like that about like how you do it, like sometimes I'll be like chaos, like, and you're just like, oh, it's just an entity trying to get into the space, but it can't because like I've done this protection, like just another day. I find that so encouraging.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that day.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a good time. But confirming too, and I think like what you're saying, conversations, right? Even if it's just like a simple conversation for any of you who are listening, watching, and you're just like maybe feeling like this pull to something more, like just even reaching out to have that conversation, because I think that's been really validating for me, and I'm sure for many other people that you have supported and chatted with. So yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. Good conversation.
Any last words that you would like to share with the people watching?
No, that's so pressured. I tap into spirit. So spirit would like, I think spirit is calling everyone to come back to themselves, and finding a way to do so because it's getting so much noisier. And if you're looking for ways to do that, I mean, myself, Fola, we're here.
Yeah. Yeah, trust that intuitive.
Yeah, that little niggle.
Yeah. I used to hate that word, but I was like,
a little tickle. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Janelle.
Thank you. This has been beautiful.
Yeah, I'll link all her social media stuff, website down in the description, so you'll have that. And hopefully I'll see you in another Occult-Cast episode. Okay, take care.
Thanks.